Thank you for joining us today. This is the Pat Sheranian Show, and I'm Pat Sheranian. My wonderful guest today is Janice Weinheimer, and she wanted to help me remember her name and how to spell it. So let's start that right off the top because it is a German name, right? And it means, let's get you closer into the microphone here. And it means wine,
House of Wine.
house of wine. So spell it for us.
Weinheimer.
Good. And the reason we want you to know that name is because she's going to be talking more this week about sexual abuse and the fallout from it and how to maybe get past it and all of that. We've been doing this for a couple of weeks and we've had really a lovely response from people that need help or want to have more information. So let me remind you that if you're on the radio, you're listening to us on KHQN 1480 on the AM dial. And if you're watching us on streaming video over the internet, you're watching at pat.utahvalleylive.com, pat.utahvalleylive.com. And if you want any information, please call 801 362 9552, 362 9552, and we'll try and answer, or join us in our chat room at pat.utahvalleylive.com. And now that we have all of that out, let's talk about your book. This has gotten more interesting as we've gone along. I think everybody runs from this subject. She's had a really difficult time getting her book in stores in the Utah area because of the subject matter. It's like nobody wants to talk about it, and yet 1 out of 3 women will be molested sexually by the time they are 18, which is horrible. And we need to learn more about it and how to prevent this happening in our families. Recently, I sold a little playhouse that my youngest grandchildren had played in. It had been in my backyard, and a neighbor came over and told me a story, a caution story, about what was happening in the sexual abuse era arena with doll houses, playhouses that children play in, and tree houses, and garages, and anywhere that is a closed area. And I think they put this, the lady that bought it down the street, if she hasn't put it in the front yard, then it should be there because it has a little door that closes and little windows that close. Same thing with tree houses. So be aware that your children are not always protected, even when they're right at home and in the backyard. So take caution there. And we're going to talk about some other things along that line. But we did want to give you a way to get hold of Janice, and we'll talk about that several times through this hour. So let's start with, if you want to find her through email to ask questions, we've had several of you contact her. We hope to get those answers out today. In fact, we will get those answers out. So you can reach her, PUGGIE 37 at yahoo.com. And that, of course, is her email, PUGGIE. And that's not Puggy, it's what?
No, it's Puggy.
Puggy 37. Puggy, PUGGIE 37 at yahoo.com. And so whether you're listening on the radio or you're watching on the internet, please, contact us through the internet in our chat room, or after we're off the show, if you have sent an email, then she'll get back to you on that. If you have any other questions, of course, 801-362-9552. All right, the book is named The Illness That Healed Me, an account of surviving sexual abuse and the journey into healing. So when she took it into the local bookstores, they wouldn't even put it on their shelf. I would like somebody to explain that to me, who understands maybe more about this subject than I do. It seems to me if 1 out of 3 women are being molested by the time they're 18, that we have a major problem and people should become more aware of it. If you have influence in your community, walk into a bookstore and ask for this, The Illness That Healed Me, an account of surviving sexual abuse and the journey into healing by Janice M. Weinheimer. Because this should be on every bookshelf in every store, and it should be on yours at home. This has gone on long enough that these things are hidden under the rug, pushed away, ignored, denied, bury our head in the sand. And Utah is one of the states that is having the largest problem in the United States.
Well, theirs is equivalent to the national stats. It's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 6 boys by the time they're 18.
1 in 6 boys by the time they're 18.
And it's usually incest.
So somebody in the family
Right.
is doing the molesting. And several weeks ago, Janice went over her story, so it's very painful. I won't ask her to do that. I'll ask you to buy the book instead to get the whole story. But we are going to talk about aspects of it today. And before we go there, I want to thank our sponsor, Kyani, Kyani. If you missed the program yesterday, it is archived on pat.utahvalleylive.com with Mary Louise Zeller. She goes through her life and how she got where she is in this program of Kyani and the enormous success and what it took to get there. Please take a few minutes and watch that. But I have been taking these products for 14 months, and I would not change because for 14 years I was sick. I had diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, crippling arthritis. I'm off of all medications and was within a month. So 14 months I've been free of medications, never have felt better, have this incredible energy, feel good all the time. People comment on my skin, which I didn't think it was that bad, but after enough comments, people say, you really look good. I think, well, what did I look like before? And so, but I do. I know that things have changed. My hair texture changed. My nails have changed. Have been many wonderful things have happened. Getting rid of the arthritis was huge. Was huge. You can see, you on the radio can't see my hands, but they're deformed. My fingers are deformed. And when I was modeling years ago in New York and Los Angeles, San Francisco, and everywhere, I was not only a runway print model, television, but I was a hand model. Well, I couldn't do that now because these hands are really crippled. But the pain is gone, and I can make a fist, and I can hold a pen again. So call me, 801-362-9552, 362-9552. Let's talk some more about this product. And I'm getting closer to picking my car up. If I'd get all the paperwork filled out, I'd go over and get the $40,000 Audi that I just earned and the company is paying for. How nice is it to drive a car you didn't have to pay for?
Oh, unbelievable.
So, hey, we're almost Christmas.
Yeah,
Maroon and green. I just realized that. And that season is coming upon us. So you have written some other books that I want to talk about because we did a little bit, but it didn't really log in. So one of your books that they can get online is Families Are Forever, If I Can Get Through This Day. So if I can get through today. Families are forever if I can get through today. That's intriguing. I want to read about that. So you've raised a bunch of kids and still have the same husband and making it all work. And you've been through the valley of death and come out on the other side. So she's written that. And also you have some holiday recipes.
Yes, there's a family favorites cookbook, which I put together with all of our family contributing to honor my mother, who was a great cook. And the second one is I love to do Christmas confections. I do 20 pounds of dipping chocolate every year.
Oh, my word.
And lots of candies that I have come up with, and people love them. And so one year I just decided to put them all down for my children and gave it to them for Christmas. And I had so many requests that I just put it on. It's called Christmas Confections.
Christmas Confections. All right. Let's give that website. It's Janice Weinheimer. You're going to spell your name again.
Wein as in Nancy, Heim as in Mary, ER.
Okay, and if you missed all that, call and I'll spell it to you. And it's .net, right?
Or .com.
Or .com. Okay, and you can find those books there as well as this book. And the Illness That Healed Me, an amazing book. Okay, now let's jump right into this subject and just go for it because we get just a little ways each time, not quite enough. You did receive, one of your emails that you received was about the map of consciousness. What is between love and enlightenment? And you might start with what is the difference between love and enlightenment, because to me, those things go together.
Well, they kind of do. Once you hit that breakoff point at 500, and we're talking about Dr. David Hawkins' book, where he does all this called Power versus Force. And in there, he gives us a map of consciousness that tells about the emotions and where we go on a scale of 1 to 1,000, with Jesus, Buddha, Krishna being at 1,000. And 20 is toxic shame, is shame. And that's where I lived most of my life. So 20 is about the lowest. Bacteria is one, number one, but you get into the animal, more the animal aspect then. And 200 is a critical point. It's the break-off point between the lower vibrating energies that weaken you and the higher vibrational energies that strengthen you. So between 200 is courage, and from there you move up to 500, which is love, and we gave those in between last time. And love at 500 is critical, because you get at 400, 499 is reason, and that's where you get a lot of the medical field and the scientific field and a lot of politicians, sometimes the higher vibrational politicians, but they never get beyond the 499 into the love, because they can't get away from that reasoning. And so moving up to love at 500 is really a critical breakout point.
I'm just curious, this is not something we've talked about, but why is it considered a mapping? I just see like a ladder or a scale that goes from 0 up to 500. When you say mapping, I see something that's mapped this way.
In his book, he does do it that way. Okay. What I gave to you was a pyramid to kind of just show you at a quick glance what it is. But he has several things in the map. There's like 10 columns in there, and it gets detailed, so I didn't go into that. And also what he did in the doing it from 1 to 1,000, he started using logarithms, because what it was happening was 10.
What is logarithm?
That's a mathematical term.
Oh,
let's not go there. I have to ask my sons about that.
I trust what you're saying. Okay, so it's a formula of some type. Okay,
right, because he said the numbers were getting so long because he was to the 10th power 250 times. Well, by the time you do to the 10th power 250 times, you got a number that's...
Okay, time out. Okay. All right. Okay, so I got that.
Okay.
Then let's go back and do this. What is between love and enlightenment? We'll start there.
500 is love. 540 is joy. 600 is peace. And from 700 to 1,000 is enlightenment.
And in your words, explain enlightenment.
That's when you become... Well, actually, we need to be in a different dimension. It's like you've moved beyond the physical.
Can I call it inspiration? Or is it more than that?
It's more than that.
It's in a state. You get in a different state of mind, a different state physically.
You have evolved to such a higher level. You're vibrating at such a higher frequency that the earth can't really hold you back anymore. And a lot of people, when they get to that point, leave and go to...
And there's certainly, I just finished reading a book about going through the veil, people that go through the veil and come back and make reports, people who have actually died and it's not their time, and so they've come back. Are we talking about that type of thing?
Not near-death experiences, no. It's beyond that. And at this point, they can decide to stay or leave, but it's not because they've died and have to come back. They're here, and they just decide, I want to move on. I don't want to stay here, so they move to the other dimension because they're already vibrating. But
they haven't died.
Well, they transition.
Okay.
To that. So it's not the physical has no more power over them. When you get to that mode, the physical cannot hold you back in any way. And in fact, you have moved beyond pain and sickness and illness when you reach that 700 level. It's the way Dr. Hawkins explains it.
We may have to all read this book. It's Power versus Force, and I didn't realize what that was about. It's called The Hidden Detriments. Is that right? What is that? Of human behavior?
Determinants.
Determinants. I'm sorry, I can't see with the light on it. Strange. David R. Hawkins, and you know him from where?
No, like so many things, I just happened onto his book and onto his, I saw webinars. I saw video clips of him. Nightingale Conant had tapes that I listened to from him. But the book,
He's been on a lot of shows as I'm looking at the back of this.
yes,
The Today Show, for one.
he had the biggest psychiatry practice in the United States for 50 years.
My word.
And he had a near-death experience. The angels actually came and gave him this map of consciousness.
Okay, so we're talking about, I can believe that. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. So 500, 540, you're moving up to 6, and that's where we'd like to live in peace.
Right.
And most of us really hunger for that. And when we find it, you do know it. When you finally get there, you do know that peace because very little can bother you.
Right.
If it does, it has to be very traumatic. And if you've been there, you know the difference and you want to hurry and get back to the peace and let whatever's causing less than that away from you, get away from it.
Another thing we might mention is when you get to these states, that doesn't mean you solidly stay there. You know, you have moments where you go back to fears and doubts and,
But you at least know what it feels like.
Yes.
That was my point. That when I finally achieved it, which I thought I had many times over the years, and I realized I was increasing my understanding. And when it finally came, it was not euphoric like I thought it might be. It was just absolutely wonderful. And I wondered why I had ever argued about anything or been stressed out about anything, because it was just a lovely place to be in my mind. Everything was balanced. Did I stay there? No, you're right. There are things that in it.
We go back into our heads.
Life comes along and you get back inside your head. You're right. Okay, so getting to 1,000 then would mean.
You're like Jesus or Buddha or Lord Krishna.
So we're all trying to get to that stage,
Yes.
depending on what you believe in. They're trying to get to that height. Would I say that way? Okay, so there are a lot of stages in between, and then at different levels of the map, we look at things differently.
Well, and also the impact you have on other people. One person vibrating at the frequency of love, 500 or above, has impact on 750,000 people who are below 200. So you influence them because of your higher vibrational frequency.
Which is why we're drawn to particular people.
Yes, exactly.
Now, you just told a little story about someone who, when she sees a homeless person, doesn't see somebody who's down on his luck or is dirty or ill-educated, not educated, or just who's given up or lazy. She sees a great person who's probably a good person who has just fallen into a situation. But she doesn't diminish their importance because of who she is.
Right, and that's exactly right. It's who you are, how you view people. Now, someone below 200 may think, oh, that's just another bum, where she has so much love and sees right through people's walls and everything, and she just loves them. And they love her. She lives in California by the ocean, and as she walks down towards the ocean, she runs into these people, and they all know her by name, and talk to her, and she talks to them, and it's just amazing the impact she has.
I know over the years I have said to people, I feel so much better having been in your presence. I didn't really know what I was saying. And now I begin to understand this vibration that each of us have. I've had that said to me on occasion, and I wasn't sure what they were saying. It does make a little more sense if you have some kind of map that you can achieve or feel like you have achieved or that you will achieve one day, because we all judge. And I'd love to get out of that stage of judging. It's almost a habit. We decide not to have our friend next door be a friend anymore because of something they've done. But you know what? That doesn't reflect on them.
Not if you see who they are on the inside as
then
another.
It doesn't happen.
And besides that, science has determined, and this is a whole nother area. I don't want to go into all
go
that.
Ahead. We may do this for years to come. Who knows?
Rupert Sheldrake, back in the 1970s, a scientist from England, coined the phrase morphic resonance and morphic fields, and science kind of poo-pooed him at the time. But he did a lot of scientific studies and found that species would react to something because of something that changed. And what it was like one of his things was blue tits, the birds in England, when they changed from the little cardboard lids that they had on milk, the
Okay.
bottles of milk,
Okay.
they used to go put their beaks in through it and drink the milk,
Oh,
with the cream on top because they didn't homogenize it. Well, when they changed that and put the aluminum tops on it, they didn't get through it. And so let me say that they didn't get through it like other birds didn't get through it, but the blue tits were able to adjust, to the change and do it. This brings up,
so they could pick through the aluminum, but the other birds could not.
yeah,
So
they did
they were
not.
able to make the change.
I hope I'm telling that story right. It's been a
Okay.
while since I thought about that. But anyway, it's because a change happens and they have to make an adjustment. But what happens, this came up with, I don't know if you've ever heard the story of the 100th monkey. But years ago in the Pacific Islands,
I've heard it,
monkeys
but it was a long time ago.
monkeys took their sweet potatoes that had been in sand and started washing them because they didn't like the taste of the sand in their mouth. And when some of them did it, others saw them, and so they started doing it, and they got repeating it. Well, it got up to what science calls the 100th monkey. At 99, it was just individual. When the 100th monkey did it, the whole species started washing their sweet potatoes. And it happened on all the islands where there was no intervention, no interchange between them. So they coined this as the 100th monkey, and it has a percentage like 17%. If you get 17% of a species or humanity to change what they're doing, then there's this field, this resonance field, Sheldrake called it, that causes them to change and the whole species changes. So now science has proven what Sheldrake, purported, and they now call it the mind of God or the God field. Because in that field, and they're talking about humanity, in that field, we are all cells or many people in one big body, humanity being body.
Okay.
And we're all a cell in that. So what each one of us does impacts, reflects on everyone else. And this is fantastic because it's taken years, 40 plus years for science to come to that, but they're now calling it the God field.
Are we doing it?
We're making a change because in the 1980s, power versus force, the world calibrated at 185. They're now 207.
The world.
The world.
World in general. With all that's going on and the wars that are going on all over our planet, I'd be curious to know what that figure is now and how, if it's higher, how it has become that. Are we trying harder? Because there are more people on Earth now than ever before? What? What is making the...
It's the impact of those who have moved to that vibrational level of 500 or above. Like I said, one person at 500 or above can impact 750,000 people below 200 just by living. They don't have to be in contact with them.
But they're good. And their goodness then is reflected from them onto other people.
And so it's changing the energy. It's going out into that mind of God field and changing the energy in the world, because all of a sudden, Dr. Hawkins says, it jumped from 185 to 207. Just jumped.
I'm talking to Janice Weinheimer. She is an author, she is a mother, she's a wife, she's a grandmother, and she's been through some extraordinary experiences, and that's how she's learned all these things that she has, because she walked in the valley of death, and because of sexual abuse as a child and as a preteen, and had terrible experiences happen to her, which she calls this illness. And what happened to her was so traumatic that it brought her life to a standstill for 5 months. Now, all of this is in the book, The Illness That Healed Me. And you'd have to almost email her to get a copy, because the bookstores will not carry it in Utah. So if you're somewhere else watching perhaps you can find it.
They do have it online at Amazon.
And
And
Amazon.com has
Barnes
it.
and Noble online.
Barnes and Noble. Okay, are they still doing books? Are they
Yes,
still
yes,
open?
yes.
They've been hit hard too, like Borders. Um, but I really find this quite fascinating because it really is about us as a community. As the circle goes wider, Covey used to talk about that, the influence we have in our own family, then, the
And it
circles of
ripples
community,
out.
and it ripples
Yes.
out. And so, what I hear you saying is the higher the vibration, the greater influence you have on other people. And without necessarily doing a lot, it's what's inside of you.
Yes,
It's
it's who
what's
you have
happening.
become.
You are, which is a light upon a hill, a reference I've heard for years, and that makes a lot more sense now to realize that some people vibrate and give off greater light because they have
And
been
that's going
enlightened.
out. That's
Yeah,
the
it's
ripple.
constantly going out. So there is hope.
Oh, yes, definitely.
There is hope that will. Which, I was watching the debate last night. I tried to stay awake, and for whatever reason, I went to sleep early and woke up at midnight. So I caught the second showing of the debates last night with the politicians. And there we do. We look to see who's enlightened, who's smart enough to make this happen, who's a leader, who has all of the things you're talking about. Because we don't always have people in higher positions who are enlightened or anywhere close to it. And so then our entire planet suffers one way or another because of it. Okay, we got that taken care of. Do you understand all of that? No, neither do I, but we're working on it. Okay, let's go on. So last week we talked a little bit about thoughts and words because I had heard the word toxic in relationship to relationships, also to music, metal music, and foods that we eat, people we sit next to or interact with sometime, and you just can hardly wait to get away from them, and others you're simply drawn to. I'm not a hugger by nature, but I've been known to hug people because I just felt so good in their presence. Now it all is beginning to make more sense. You going to do seminars on this?
I would love to. I have so much in my head a lot of times, and
But if you
I
did it in a workbook where they had a workbook to work with, people can actually write down thoughts and feelings and draw pictures of thoughts and feelings. If you had like a workshop, a seminar slash workshop instead of just listening, but they would have to participate.
right. Yes, because I don't like anyone just sitting listening. That's not the way I teach.
So you need to interact to make
Yes.
things. I've learned that over the years. If you can interact, things change, and you change your feelings more quickly if you're interacting.
And there are different methods you can use. I remember I was in an energy release class working on releases from my sexual abuse. And that day I had chosen, it was an all day workshop, 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night.
That's a long workshop.
And we did 3 releases. That's all that day. And the major one, and they used an Alexander technique. Hadn't thought about this, but you blow up helium type balloons, 15 of them. And if you hold them on your stomach and pull them, it pops the energy that's inside you out instead of holding it in. Well, I could never pop them by pulling on those balloons.
They actually popped?
Yeah,
They
when
burst?
when you hold them and pull them
Without putting a pin in them? Or?
Yeah, everyone else could do it. I couldn't. Mine wouldn't pop. But then she divided us. We were like in a huge auditorium gym, more like a gymnasium. And we each went to a separate part of the room. And we had our little script that we were to use, and we were to ask our spirits to guide us into which release we were to make that day. So it's like going to the subconscious mind and saying, what are you willing for me to work on? And so
I want to insert something right there because don't lose your thought. But you talked about this before, and I thought about when I pray, when others pray, I'm sure they have the same experience, but I get kind of a ticker tape answer. I can see it. I can read it. And then that went from that stage to I asked something. One time I was talking about I wanted to own my house. And it came out in a question form. Should I own this house? And it was almost audible. No. And had I purchased the house, it would have been a disaster with the economy changing and different things happening in my life. And recently I asked that question again, just in the prayer, in an evening prayer, and the answer came yes. And I'm having more fun with that. But then I began doing that with a lot of different things, and I began feeling, how can you feel a yes or no? But I did. It was, I could hear it, and then I could feel, should I do this show? Is this something that's going to benefit our community and other people? I just about got yelled at, yes. It was so strong.
The more you do this, the more you get the feeling of the higher energy is yes. The lower frequencies are no.
But there are times that we hear no.
Yes, and when that no comes, it's not the high energy.
I have fussed with it, and then I didn't feel good.
But you
I'd
get
leave it
so you
alone.
can read that. And
Interesting.
the higher level above to 500 and above, the easier that becomes for us to be able to.
So let's go back to your
truth versus-
workshops now, because if you're going to put these together, this community needs help in this area of releasing guilt, releasing shame, brought on maybe not by sexual abuse, but by other types of abuse, or just simply your own personal expectations, which have reached a point of absolutely creating stress throughout your body, which has now become toxic, which then women get cancer, men get cancer, children get cancer. There has to be a logical answer to this. There has to be.
And it's called trapped emotions.
There you go. Okay.
Dr. Bradley Nelson.
Okay, so all of us are running around with some degree of trapped emotions.
Yes.
And so if you have been able to release these through what you've learned, you are obligated to teach others.
I feel
How
that
does that
deeply.
feel?
I know I have felt that since, well, even before the book was out. It took me 20 years to write this book. And I kept, I'd write a little and then I'd say, my ego mind, says, who do you think you are? You can write a book.
You felt unworthy. Who would read it anyway?
Yeah, all of that chatter. And then I'd put it on the back burner and say, I'm through. And then I'd wake up at night hearing voices, write your book. Or I'd feel like there were women surrounding me in the room. Please, we need this. And so then I'd start to write again. And it took me 20 years because it's not a subject you like to talk about. It's not a subject you want to put yourself out there to the public. I mean, like when I was Book Expo America in New York last year in May, I had people walk by, they'd go by my table and the book drew them over. And as soon as they saw the subtitle, an account of sexual abuse, they took off. They wouldn't even speak to me. And so it's difficult for the public, to accept this. But there's a new way with the emotion code to release these. And that's what I was going to tell you about when I took this all-day seminar and did 3 releases that day. I, like with the helium balloons, couldn't pop them. And so I was off in my own little corner. And I could hear people, crying, weeping, and the guttural crying and the balloons popping everywhere. And I couldn't do anything, didn't feel anything. All of a sudden, it was like a burst of energy hit me. I took my ballpoint pen and I stabbed every one of those 15 balloons I had. And I was working on the release on the lifeguard who had abused me. And the teacher was clear across the gymnasium. And she came running over to me, and afterwards I was in fetal position, rocking, and she started pounding on my shoulders and my back. And she said across the room, because she could see energy, she could see these dark clouds of energy coming up from my back after I stabbed those balloons. It was like I had taken a knife and stabbed him.
So you couldn't make the balloons pop this way. So
No.
you just took action then.
And I didn't even think about it. I just picked up the pen and started stabbing them, and I couldn't stop once I started. But since then, and since that day,
And you released, you felt like you were releasing.
by that night, I have no longer had a problem with him. In fact, my heart goes out to that young man because he was 18 and he had a glass eye. And I don't know what happened to him. He was very good looking other than that glass eye. And yet you feel like something must have happened to him in order to have him do such an act. And so I don't hate, and there's forgiveness in my heart and compassion for all those who have struggled, who become the perpetrators, because you just know that something has gone on in their lives to cause them below energy of 200, to cause them to react in such a way.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. I'm Pat Sheranian, and thank you for being with us today. The number to call for in any of the information that you're hearing this morning, I can get you forward to Janice, is 801 362 9552. 801 362 9552. To reach Janice by email, it's PUGGIE 37 at yahoo.com. PUGGIE 37 at yahoo.com. Her book, The Illness That Healed Me, about sexual abuse, can be purchased through Barnes and Noble and also on Amazon
Right.
online. And so we invite you to do that. She also has several other books that are available. So contact her through her Yahoo.
Website.
Yeah, through. I think that's an easier way than
Yeah.
trying to remember to spell your name, which I haven't mastered yet. So, but get in touch with her. At the Kyani Products, we're grateful for them. For their support in this as one of our sponsors. We're going to be recording some of our other sponsors who will have commercials going by next week, we think. And grateful to all of them and to my guests that come on. Janice is going to come on a couple of more weeks. We have, bunches of questions here, so let's go through as quick as we can. We spoke about the words and things. We did that. Addiction. Let's talk about addiction comes from desire at
125.
125. You're way down in the negative area at that point. So people that use drugs, they're trying to suppress the lower energies and your addiction stuff and counterfeit love and stuff that you went through. Let's talk about that really quick. And then we mentioned prayer just a little bit. We're going to go back to the power of prayer, which I think it changes your food when you pray over it.
Oh, definitely.
I've reached a point where I've decided to get the rest of this weight off. I'm going to have to pray it off, and that's just about what it amounts to. And then I want to talk about Caroline. How do you pronounce her last name? Meese. Because I've heard her name. We want to talk about that. We've talked a little bit about your seminars and workshop/seminar/workshop. And let's put that together. And next week, come with some information about where you can hold your first seminar and see if we can get some people there and that need help.
Okay.
Those are the ones we want to see if we can help. So contact us if you're watching on pat.utahvalleylive.com. We have a chat room, and please send a question or a comment. We've had a couple. We'll be happy to have some more. Our call, 801-362-9552. And one of these days, we may have a telephone that you can call in on, and we'll talk right on the air. We can do that. Okay. All right, we've got so much to cover. Where
addictions.
Let's do addictions. Okay.
Okay, at desire, which Pat has said it's at the level 125. And this is where people get addicted to things, to drugs, to alcohol, whatever. There's several addictions.
People.
And TV.
They're people addictions. You get addicted to a particular person.
So, and my addiction was I surrounded myself with what my husband calls junk, with tons of things, so that it made me feel safe.
Material things?
Yes.
Things in your home?
The first addiction I had was fabric.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I sewed all my children's clothes when they were little. And when we moved from Bountiful to Phoenix, I had over 800 pounds of fabric.
Oh, my word.
I went to all the sales. I couldn't stop.
You collected.
Yes, but I didn't realize what I was doing, because surrounding myself with things was a counterfeit form of love. And I didn't feel love, so I surrounded myself with things. After we moved back from Phoenix 7 years later, and I had even more fabric and lace and thread and buttons and zippers and everything that went along with it, all the patterns, and my husband got after me. So the only way I could quit was not go to the sales. So I just didn't go to the fabric shops. But then I started taping movies. You know,
Oh
we had
my.
the videos out, and
Right.
so I had over 1,000 tapes with like 3 movies on each, and now it's DVDs, and I'm moving the videos to DVDs, and my son said to me, "But when do you watch them?" I said, "Believe me, I do."
You really do?
Yeah, I
But do you recognize this as a type of
yeah,
compulsion?
I know it's still an addiction, something that I get to deal with, but it's covering up something, because what happens at that point is people who take, you know, like drugs, it suppresses all the lower energies and the weaknesses that you feel there. So I know that's what I'm doing.
So,
But
okay, so the drugs cover up the feelings of inadequacy, or I'm not succeeding, or I'm not loved, or so they cover up these lower feelings. It's an attempt then to raise yourself to
mhm.
a higher.
And that's why it's called a high,
Oh,
because you're raising yourself. You're not feeling the lower frequencies anymore. You're feeling higher frequencies.
and
So,
so, but drugs are a spiral downward. All of this is a spiral
well,
downward.
yes, eventually, because of what it does to you, but at the moment you're taking them, you get a high.
That's
Because,
true. I have been a yard sale junkie for years. And when it began to move me out of my house because I couldn't get, in fact, my children have accused me of having so much in my house. It's a little house that if they fell down, there would be no floor to fall on. So, it's
I think
a,
my husband could relate to
yeah.
that.
But I've loved it and I've loved the people I've met. And it's been, I'll set my mind in the morning and I'll say, okay, today I need to find this. And I go find it. Sometimes it's been very, very useful to be able to do that. I furnished offices, I furnished homes and apartments, and just deciding it today. But yard sales have changed a lot. People don't have the money to come, and a lot of things that I've enjoyed, after I enjoyed them, I put them out in the yard sale. And things are very, they buy necessities now. It's changed a good deal. And it's not as fun as it used to be. Besides, I've said to myself, you don't need any more. You don't need any more things than you have. And but I had to recognize that there was an addiction going on there. That I was having so much fun. In the end, it wasn't that gratifying. In the end, and so I think we do these things to ourselves. But I worry about kids and the drugs today, and it seems like every day some kids come up with a new thing to get a high from, to get away from who they are. There
It,
must be holes inside of people that they
oh, yes,
the
definitely. That
pain,
all of us
that
carry that
just
emotional
big,
baggage.
huge emotional hole to make some of the decisions that they make. I just got a message from a relative of mine that says we're not having any more yard sales. Shoot, I used to know all those people by their first names that came to my yard sales. We had a really fun. In fact, I did tradio on the air for years and years on another radio station, and I just love the people that called in. Okay, so I'm getting over my addiction. Maybe I'll have one more.
I had a thought and it escaped me. I keep trying to get that on the addictions. Maybe it'll come back to me,
Okay.
because there's a reason why we're doing it. It
Well,
left
and
me.
I thought it was fun until I realized I didn't need one more
Oh,
picture hanging on
I
my wall.
remember what it
Okay.
was. The 12-step program. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
you talk about
Right.
Alcoholics Anonymous. They learned from doing this program that until the person was willing to change from within, they could not help them. It had to come from within. So nothing from without helped any of these people. And there are several step programs now. But it was not until this Bill W. found that out that people had to be willing to do it from within.
To start the steps from within.
Right.
Well, that would be true if you're anything that you do obsessively, whether it's drinking coffee, eating too much sugar, eating too much white flour, eating whatever it happens to be. You have to make the decision.
It's not the will that changes us. You cannot have enough will to do that. It has to be that desire that's coming from the spirit realm.
Something deeper.
Yes.
Okay.
because
haven't thought about
willpower is
that.
not enough.
I would have said it would take
It
willpower.
it takes. I mean, willpower will work for a while, and for some people, it may work, but the vast majority, and this is what they found out in this step, a
So
12
it's a
step,
much deeper level.
because they'd work through it and then they'd get re-addicted. It wouldn't last until that comes from within. It's not a lasting thing because you're not changing the vibrational energy that you have. It has to change.
Okay, so in your seminar workshops, do you go through some of this 12 step?
Not really, because I'm in a different modality. The emotion code that I do, the releases happen in minutes, and it can impact you for your life. I mean, once you release those trapped emotions inside you, which are lower vibrational frequencies, they're gone. They no longer inhabit you. And once they're
How do you
gone,
know if you really release them? I mean,
I
we're
test.
also, oh, okay.
I
We're,
get
we're,
I
we're
get a
all
yes answer, or I do it again.
to yourself, to other people when you're working with
When
other
I'm
people.
testing, it comes from their subconscious mind.
How many people can you handle in a workshop effectively to start with?
Well, unless I'm trained to do that kind of thing, I have to do it individually. I
Okay.
mean, I would have to go back and get additional training to teach others.
Let's talk about the training you have.
Okay, it took several months for me, and I started in January, and I just got certified the end of August. So I spent a long time, and I went to live seminar. Dr. Bradley Nelson had one in Salt Lake in April, and I spent the whole day at the Salt Palace. And it was, even though I'd watched him in webinars and I'd watched him on DVDs because I bought the whole program and I saw what he had done, it's not the same energy as being there live
Right.
and being around him. And he's such a humble man and shows you all the ways that you can do these things. And of course, you can have him, come and do that.
Well, if
But
you're certified,
I
what
can
that certification gives you the opportunity to
to
what?
release the energies from people. And in my own family, I have taught them how to do what is called the sway test, so they can, like, I had someone who was in deep anxiety, and so I couldn't be there, every single day. And so I eventually taught her how to do it. And I can do it vicariously. I don't have to be there with the person. I can do it by proxy. If you were in Japan, I could work on you,
Okay.
through the telephone, through the internet, or on Skype,
Okay.
and I just do it by proxy, and I do the muscle testing for you, but I get a link to your subconscious to
So
do this.
if we could put something together here just in Utah area, in the central Utah area where we are, or maybe northern Utah, but anyway, around here, could you handle 6 to 10 people?
Oh, yes,
Okay, so
because
that,
it only
but
takes
we're not
minutes.
talking 2,000.
No, it only
Okay.
takes minutes to release. I could do it easily, a release on, 20 people in
Okay.
an hour.
And so next week, let us know what that would cost for a whole full day like that, and let's see what happens.
A
Because
whole full day.
a whole full day. How about 8 hours to start with? Can you do something in 8 hours?
I'd rather try an evening at first.
Start one evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to see if it would work. I don't want to put that.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we offer free classes for trial? And
Okay.
let's go through it, and that'll help you know what you need in a workbook, what we would like to have, what would work for each one of us as we all work together. Because I would find that very interesting. I don't know anybody that wants to feel worse than they feel. I haven't met that person
No, I
yet
don't think so.
who says, I'm really having a crummy day and I want it to get worse. The people I know and associate with, and those that I vaguely know, I just have never heard of anybody that wants to feel better. We all want to feel better. We want to take products that get rid of medication. We want to have thoughts that get rid of evil. We want to feel uplifted. And all of us have the desire to help other people.
Yes.
We really do. I've stopped trying to fix people. That was my big thing. I was going
No, we
to
can't
fix
fix
everybody
them.
in my family and everywhere, and I learned the hard way. We can't fix people, even if they think that we can help them. But what we can do is share with them our energy. That's what you're talking about,
Well,
right?
and the other thing is, I can't release any trapped emotions from someone without
They have,
first getting their permission to work on them.
so you have to have that. Okay. We mentioned prayer, but let's just talk a little quick minute here about the power of prayer. I would think that people in our listening audience and viewing us on the internet certainly understand something about power of prayer.
Well, Dr. Larry Dose, years ago, I ran into him probably in the 80s on TV, and he was an atheist. He didn't believe in prayer or anything, but for some reason he was doing a study, and he had prayer people, organizations that came in and would pray for different patients of his, and he saw the difference, and it changed him immediately. Well, not immediately, but it changed him as he saw these scientific studies and what it did for people. And so he started using prayer regularly on his patients. And he said, "You don't even have to believe for it to work." He says, "I didn't believe."
And
And
it worked.
so, and it still works. So whether you believe or not, the prayer, the power in prayer is there. If you ask, that invites God into your life, because without that, he won't come, he, she, it, because that invades your free agency. But once you
Once you
ask,
ask.
and this, oh, I might mention this, when I had just turned 16, and the teacher in high school who had abused me sexually, last time we talked about the moral issues, and I knew it was wrong, but the pull for love and Maslow's hierarchy of needs was stronger than that moral teaching. Besides, no was not an option. We discussed that. And so the inner me was struggling with this, and my father had just baled hay that day. And that night, I went out behind the house in the field and knelt down by a bale of hay and pleaded with God to assist me, because I didn't know what to do or how to do it or where to go. The next day, two of my friends went to another teacher and told him what was going on. That started me on a different path, breaking the cycle and assisting me. And this man was so loving and kind to me. And I was humiliated when I'd only told one friend, but she confided in the other. And to this day, she's a close friend. And she said to me, "I think back on that day of two 16-year-olds, and how did they have the courage to
To
go
go.
do that?" Well, that was the power of prayer. But God didn't intervene until I asked. And that's what I mean. When you ask,
It's
then
there.
it's there.
And
And it
not
may not be in the way you
I
want it
started to
to
say it
be.
may not always be answered immediately, and it may not be the way we expect it to be, but I believe in the power of prayer. I definitely do. Let's talk a little about environment causes and what happens to us, why we have cancer cells, and what happens to
Okay,
some
that's Dr. Bruce
who
Lipton.
get cancer. Now, I've always felt, not always, but the last few years, I felt that people do cancer to themselves. It's that I believe the women I know that have had cancer, particularly breast cancer of all ages. They've passed away now, and I love them dearly. They were people that stewed. They held a lot of emotion and feelings inside. Had they overworked. They were achievers,
Yes, know
and
that.
I felt they did this to themselves, just which is so sad, because I think maybe it was the white flour, maybe it was the sugar, maybe it was the stress, maybe it was not talking about issues because they weren't popular issues that people talked about every day. Maybe it was something that happened as a child. Whatever. I'm almost convinced at this point a lot of our illness is something we create for one reason or another. Now, I'm done away with all my illnesses. I am not going to be ill anymore. Kione products have helped me enormously, but I made a decision. I drew a line in the sand and I said, that's it. I'm not getting sick anymore. I'm not having pneumonia. I'm not getting flu ever again. And so far, I haven't. And I'm loving it because it's working.
See, that's that changeover. Like we were talking the 12-step program, you made the decision from within.
I did.
And so that empowered you to get the blessing that you were seeking. And I can explain why, because Dr. Bruce Lipton he's a biologist, He was a doctor. He taught medical students for years, and he did a test with cells, putting different this just cells in 3 different petri dishes, and well, he'd done lots of samples tests, but this one he put them in different environment because he'd done it before and they all remained the same. And so he put just a little different environment, but the same cells, same stem cells. And this time, one became muscle, one became fat, and one became tissue of some kind. I don't remember. And when he presented this to the medical field, they kind of voted him down. They didn't agree with him, so he quit. And he went to some island, in Central America, and he started teaching medical students who were interested in learning the truth, who would have to pay their own way and not get government help. And they came down there, and he saw that there still was an interest, so he went back to Stanford and started doing this. And with his years of intense study, he found out that it's not the genes that create in us what we are, but rather it's our attitudes, perspective, and beliefs.
I tell you, I believed that for a long time. I've never heard anybody agree with me.
Well, he said 5% is in our conscious mind, and that's where the creativity comes from, because it can leap from present to past. The conscious mind flits. The subconscious is like a tape recorder. You push the button and it replays what it's heard. But 95% of what goes on in us is from that subconscious mind. It's just replaying programs
over
and over and over. And so to change that, it takes an intensity. And the thing that was so enlightening to him was he found out that people, that get cancer, we all have cancer cells. So why do some people get cancer and others don't? It's the environment, the belief, the perspectives, and the attitudes.
We could do a whole program on just
yes.
that.
Oh,
right
yeah.
There, right
he
there.
has done several. He's written books.
Oh, well, we can go. I've got a couple more questions I want to ask. Let's see. Let's go to the discipline. To punish is to damage. You never mend a person by damaging him. We're going to run out of time, so I'd like to kind of wind up on that. And then you mentioned a father who molested his 2-month-old baby and kind of what happened there. And that may have to wait. You're coming back a couple more times at least? Good. Then we're going to talk about her seminars also. So let's take about 2 minutes here and do this, just a little bit on this discipline.
Okay, that's George Bernard Shaw. I ran into that years ago. He said to punish a child is to damage them. You don't heal a person by damaging them. And so there's a difference between discipline and punishing. And to discipline takes a higher vibrational energy. And the best way I can explain it is when I graduated from college, I had all these high ideals. I didn't know much about little children. I'm more geared for teenagers, but I never wanted to punish, or do any of those things. But because I didn't know how, I didn't understand little children, I took the advice of other people and I did things I have regretted.
Well, we only know what we've been taught, usually in our own families.
But I have a daughter. I hope I can talk about this. That I have witnessed that disciplines with love. And I could remember when her young 4-year-old daughter, they were at our place and they were leaving, and her daughter started running around the side of the house, and her mother went after her and I went the other side. And when I found her, I said, "You're in big trouble." And my daughter turned to me and in very firm voice, she said, "Don't you ever say that to a child of mine."
We learn from each other. Thank goodness we can learn from our children. We teach them, and then we become the student along the way. So thank you, Janice Weinheimer, for being with us. She's going to be back. I want to thank Kent Vorkink. If you go to UtahValleyLive.com, you can see other things that are going on in Utah Valley on the internet. If you're at KHQN 1480, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate you. Join us again. I am on every day at noon, and I invite you back. Thanks again for being with us. And Janice, thank you We are learning and we appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.